Let's start.
On peut commencer.
Colleagues to sit in the inside table or the high table as we call it, so that we are all here. We just a few of us, please. Uh, as you move, colleagues, let me just open this up. Okay, I was trying to get the mic closer to me. It's fine. So, colleagues, this is a conversation for the local DFIs in South Africa. So, if you're here and you're not for that, then I'm just informing you that's that conversation, so that you don't say, why are we talking about local DFIs here? You were looking for a broader conversation. So you are warned, colleagues. So let's open this. We face quite a complex social and economic situation here in South Africa. And I always like to contextualize that by referencing the average aggregate over the past 10, 20 years. You know, if you look at the level of investment that we have made as a nation, you'll find that we have averaged around 16% of GDP. If you look at growth itself, you find that we have averaged 1 or just sub 1, percent over this decade, or let's say 2-decade period. You look at levels of unemployment, you find that we've averaged 28, 29%. We have seen levels of poverty 50% and more. Same thing with inequality, 0.60, 0.65, and so on. So the point I'm making is that there is quite a number of challenges that we're facing. And I think DFIs, ourselves as DFIs, at all levels, national, provincial, municipal, we've got quite a huge role to play. But I find that the individual interventions that we make, sometimes they're too small or they're too scattered and therefore less impactful. So the case that we want to make here is that we should collaborate, national, provincial, local, we should collaborate, and we should share knowledge, because we have different strengths, and we should synergize and combine those strengths to achieve what we want. So what we hope to do here today is to come up with 2 or 3 concrete actions, how we can collaborate, and secondly, how we can, support the G20 on the Sherpa side, because I think if you have noticed, most of the conversations have been on the finance track side, on the sessions we've had. But for this one, we want to specifically talk to the Sherpa side and specifically the development working group there to see how we can support that. So there's a small program we've prepared. We're going to have the CEO of DBSA, Ms. Boitumelo Musako. She will say a few words, and then we will invite Carlos De Freitas from FMDV to share with us the Brazilian experience on how they went about collaborating between national and subnational DFIs. And then we're going to have the Director General of DPME, Dr. Robert Nkuna, who will then talk to us about what the development working group is about and where are the possible areas where we can participate as DFIs. And then we can have an open discussion here. I'll use my discretion because I invited everyone to the high table, so the people at the people at the back, I'll see whether I invite them to speak or not. and then the CEO will close. So maybe let's start with you, CEO.
Okay. What time is it? It's 5:45. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this timely discussion that we should be having as South African DFIs. I think this meeting is long overdue, and we thought we should take advantage of the Finance in Common to kickstart this discussion of how we collaborate to address our nation's challenges. The Development Finance Institutions CEO Forum was established in October 2021, and at that time it was made up of the CEO of DBSA, IDC, National Empowerment Fund, and senior officials of the Presidential Climate Commission and the NDB. And the overall objective of the forum was to strategically locate, define, and execute the just transition role of DFIs in South Africa, including assuming conceptual leadership roles through ideas and actions in order to contribute to the global transition towards low carbon economies and climate resilient societies. And we see in the implementation plan the allocations that have been made and responsibilities in terms of who does what according to the Just Transition Implementation Plan. Although initially attended by national, the forum was actually set up to involve all of us. But that it didn't quite evolve to do that. We were supposed to gather to provide strategic direction, to engage government at a high level to clarify national policy positions, engage in domestic and international conversations, resources and come up with task teams. Now, the approach of the CFO Forum is to really set up a work program to be implemented by the task teams, which in turn form technical work stream to work on a few carefully selected work areas. That's what we would like to achieve, and looking at reviewing and updating from time to time. We sit here today, living in the most unequal country in the world. We sit here today with an unemployment rate of about more than 30%, and a youth unemployment rate that's even higher. We sit here today with more people on the grant system than taxpaying. And it's important for us together to find ways of changing all of this. How best can we use the resources that we have? What are the strategy roadmaps and capabilities that we have? Because this discussion should go beyond climate. This is about how we use climate or climate finance, for instance, to attain the socio-economic aspirations that we have as a country. There are about 45 development finance institutions and development finance agencies in South Africa. 12 at national, 16 at provincial, 17 at local government. And when you look at each of us doing what we need to do, we all have strengths in the institutions that we are many, each and every one of us. And this is about how do we leverage our strength for greater impact and for a multiplied effect. Why is it that we're not working together the way we should be working? Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to change that. I know, we are meeting at this forum, but we thought it opportune. There's no time like when you say, you know what, most people might be there. Maybe this would be a good time to do this. So we thought it opportune that we invite all of you so that we could start this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, C. Let me now invite you, Carlos, to share with us some of the experiences that you have found dealing with the Brazilian economy. As I said, we are here from national, province, municipal, and maybe we'll pick up something from you. Thank you.
I hope so. At least inspiration, controversy, polemics. We'll see. If you can put the presentation on, perfect. Thank you. Just to say that I focused because there would have been so many ways to present this and the design of this kind of collaborative platforms between national DFIs. I chose to present an example coming from Brazil. For many reasons, because it works, first one, but also because it's a little bit the same kind of country profile that we have with South Africa. So basically presenting the ABD, the association of the Brazilian Association for Development of Brazil, which composes the national development system. As an example, the kind of why is it so important to have national DFI platforms and collaborations, and maybe food for thought in the next steps that you could imagine, also to launch somehow maybe the debate between you. So ABD has a mandate as an association to promote the articulation, representation, and strengthening of the DFIs in Brazil, fostering integration between national and regional institutions to drive sustainable and inclusive development. This is the mandate. And under the mandate was created this notion, this flagship banner of everyone belongs to the national development system. This is a very strong wording that you will find in the institutional documents, also in terms of interlocution between the different levels of action, national, regional, and local. This is the main reference element of their activism. And the NDS is a network of public and private financial institutions from across Brazil that operate at regional and national levels. They have more or less 30 institutions, federal and state public development banks, development agencies, cooperative banks, as well as FINEP, which is a National Development Fund for Innovation, and SEBRAE, which was formerly a public entity dedicated to supporting SMEs. They cover a wide range of competencies, responsibilities, and have over decades of operation. So basically, the NDS works as an interconnected network of institutions capable of supporting collaborative and complementary projects, and it resonates obviously with the national policies. Very quickly, the core objectives, obviously, coordination, capacity building, policy advocacy, research and development. I'll go a little bit fast. I will leave you with the presentation for future talks, but because you can really understand this kind of processes. It was born in 1997. First, it was very much national DFIs working together. Of course, you know that Brazil is a huge country And they expanded the membership to province-level subnational DFIs. They launched in 2020 the ABD Sustainability Agenda to align with the Paris agreements, which allowed to integrate in the norms and proceedings of the diverse DFIs the criteria to match with the Paris Agreement, and they contributed to the to design the national development financing strategy. In terms of governance structure, they have basically an executive board, technical committees, a general assembly. It's consensus driven. The members, as I said, are national DFIs and 27 state level DFIs. You have a series of working groups in all very strategic sectors for the national economy. And they represent 240 billion US dollars in assets. And in disbursements, you can see the numbers also, 56 million in 2023. In terms of tools, they provide a quarterly journal on development economics, sectoral reports that feed the conversation at the national level, policy papers, obviously, training programs. They have also digital platforms, a knowledge hub, and of course, the organized webinar series, especially with partners, development partners. The alignment with national and global goals through this unified platform ensures DFIs act as a system, and we are here at FIX. It's part of the advocacy of FIX to make sure that all PDBs work together and act as a system. And of course, it also allowed, because the country is so huge, to avoid duplication and streamline efforts among the DFIs to prioritize the projects. Somehow the lessons learned and what could be applied to to South Africa, what they have learned and shared with us, the regular workshops and joint research reduce fragmentation in the DFI's ecosystem. They so here you could create the same kind of platforms for certain components, very strategic one, the transition investment case studies and best practices in blended finance, for example. This is just suggestions for the conversation. In terms of policy, advocacy, and global influence, ABD's advocacy shaped Brazil's sovereign sustainability bond framework, for example. This is also an opportunity for you to have a collective voice, of course, to influence the global agendas, but also attract global partnerships. And the association has really supported this kind of matchmaking with donors and partners at the global level for the DFIs. Strengthen domestic resource mobilization. A lot of data was made available through the association, bringing a better image on what was happening from the national level to the local level. It's really a very strong capillarity process of data analysis. And this can be, of course, aggregated to showcase collective impacts, especially regarding the global agendas. In terms of governance and sustainability, you could have a steering committee which is led by national and key provincial DFIs, because it's very important to make sure that the national policies are fed with what comes from the local level, and especially in terms of innovation tools. And to bring in steering committees this kind of profiles showcases the fact that there is this kind of effort for complementarity, but also respect, even though the sizes of each one of the DFIs are not at the same level of capability, but still the vision shared is very important. Of course, the working groups, you could focus on the transition topics. And this is an example of timeline that you could have, which is to formalize a mandate and the membership criteria if you want to really launch a platform, launch a first knowledge sharing portal, and of course publish inaugural DFI impact report 1 year after that, because this is the kind of process also that make people engage, institutions engage in a process. If we resonate with the fix 2025 objectives and others in general, of course, you could discuss also a potential South African DFI charter that could be also a message sent both to national authorities but also to development partners. That could be one of the first deliverables of that conversation also. Of course, you have the example of ABD's success in leveraging subnational DFIs. This is really part of a system that has shown what kind of market was existing, market niches that were existing at the local level. And that's a very good example, and it worked with the commitment of all the DFIs in the association. Of course, the technical committees are very relevant. It's important to understand the profile of the diverse DFIs and to make sure that you classify them, to make sure to point to development partners where they need to go and who they need to meet if they really want to have leverage. A transition investment matrix, map DFI's capabilities for just transition needs, obviously, and a governance blueprint, define roles, for example, DBSA at the steering committee, IDC and the industrial working group, and provincial DFIs as regional hubs. This is just an example to say that if you have the profiling of them, then you can give them certain very key roles in the process of implementing the national policies. The advantages, it's basically what I said for ABDE, enhanced access to funding and partnerships, knowledge exchange and capacity building, reduced operational costs, policy influence and regulatory advocacy, improved impact measurement. I think that apart from the global visibility, which is a key component for every nation and every nation's DFIs, the bargaining power is very essential in that sense. And then for the rest, you can understand very easily that the unified voice, the kind of tools, knowledge sharing processes are very key and impactful. This is an example of category, very simple example of categorization by maturity, sectoral focus, typology of financial mechanisms, and geographic scope. This helps a lot to have this kind of mappings, especially when we are talking about these country platforms like the JETP, etc. This helps a lot in bringing the vested interests, but also the comparative advantages and beneficiaries to the table and come for the conversation. Strategic complementarity at the sectoral and geographic level to just understand the competitive advantages of the DFIs. And the collaboration opportunities, to pair industrial projects with SMEs to build supply chains, this kind of basic elements, but that are reinforced within this conversation between the DFIs and the national infrastructure finance with development agencies for port upgrades, which is a very good example also of kind of leverage projects. Two kind of working groups that could be imagined here, as I said, Transition Finance Task Force and SME Support Network. Just to summarize the recommendation, a well-structured association platform, whatever the format is, can enable the DFIs to coordinate transition investments under a shared mandate, turn fragmentation into synergy, amplify the national and regional influence as a cohesive system, position South Africa as a global leader in transition finance, and deliver measurable impact aligned with the global and national commitments and goals. Basically becoming a national influencer and leaders league. And just to say that there are not so many examples of national platforms of DFIs. You have another one in Malaysia, for example, which has been very critical in designing new funding resources for national development. But I think this attempt that you are pushing for is a very good way to make sure that South Africa plays this role at the global level and national level for new development patterns also. This would allow to renovate a little bit the kind of proposals coming from the DFIs, and especially here when you see how the conversation is too often led by global DFIs, multilateral development banks, and not enough from DFIs coming from the ground, which has a very different way of designing the mechanisms, designing the partnerships, and having, of course, impact that are better measurable. I will finish here, and I hope I did not took too much time.
Okay, no, it's all right. Thank you so much, Carlos. This is exciting. This is exciting, and yeah, the exact thing I was looking for that you would share with us. Thank you so much. I want to move quickly to you, Mabutane. Share with us the development working group objectives and how we can play a role. And then we can have a conversation on those two issues. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Program Director, CEO, and other leaders, and to our friends from Brazil. Boa noite, bem-vindo a África do Sul, and muito obrigado. Now, colleagues, it is good for us to be here, coming from government. We are not a DFI in a way, but a very important government institution that you need to be aligned to if you are to do what was being said. It is a coincidence that just this morning, government announced that we have succeeded to put together a 5-year plan, what we call the medium-term development plan, which, according to the statement issued by Cabinet this morning, was done in a space of 8 months. So since the establishment of the GNU, we have been hard at work to put together the plan. So there is a plan indeed in South Africa. Now, given what we are beginning to hear from the presentations that have been made, it means that there is more to be done in us working together. There is a suggestion that the DFIs should be insiders in government. You ought to have been the first to know about the plan that we are talking about, and that is something that we need to fix in the system to ensure that you know about, in fact, not only to know, but to be part of the process of developing the plan. And I'm going to make a request up front that we convene another session where we are going to unpack this plan that has been approved by Cabinet for the next 5 years of government. I think it will be a serious omission if we're to move forward with things as normal without that engagement. We need to come and unpack the entire plan to ourselves so that we can pose a question whether we have capacity to take that plan forward and also to influence the kind of things that the departments are doing. I listened to one session at the plenary, and it became pretty obvious that the DFIs in South Africa and indeed elsewhere are not just paper pushers, but we have vested interest in us taking correct decisions. So I think we'll have to come back to that. But for the purposes of today, we have come to talk briefly about the G20 insofar as it concerns the working group that we are coordinating, the development working group. Now, colleagues, we meet in a world that is very uncertain in many ways, as other speakers have indicated. There are many things that are happening in the world, and one will not waste time to go through them. They are very pretty obvious to all of us. But we must be very grateful that institutions like the G20 continue to exist, they are still there, that allow us to still talk to each other, listen to each other. Now, we cannot take for granted the hosting of an event like this, because the actual delivery of an event like this is not having a good summit, but things that we do throughout, the networks that we establish, the ideas that we put across, and so on. So we need to see what we are doing beyond just the summit that's going to be hosted in November, and start to work on things that matter to us. We must have interest so that we are not a country that just enjoys saying that we had a good event, but after that event, we look at each other and say, what can we do? So we need to think very seriously. It has been overstated that we are not doing well when it comes to the SDGs across the world. Most of the outcomes and the commitments are not being met across the world. So we need to ask ourselves questions whether the MTDP and the work of the DFIs do take us forward. So what we have seen in the last few moments is that there have been decisions that are being taken throughout the many summits that have taken place. From one summit to another, you find that there are decisions that are taken. And in the last 3 summits, they were all in the developing world, and we should be very interested in the kind of things that came up, because it is said now that it will take us more than 10 years to have another summit in a developing country. So we are the last in this round of summits that are being hosted. So it will take very long for us to be able to set the agenda. So we have to take very serious what we are doing now. Just maybe as an overview of the work that we are doing in our working group, we are focusing on 3 areas. One is the difficult one on public goods, which are very difficult to define, or one can say that the whole concept of public goods is very contested throughout the world. It means different things to different people. And defining the scope of what constitutes public goods is not always an easy feat, but something that as South Africa we should attempt to pursue, and also try to link up with other developing countries to find consensus on what that means in real terms. The second part, which is your forte, is around development financing, which is a very big deal, as I've indicated that you will see when you look at the medium-term development plan that we have a very big ambition to take South Africa to the next trajectory. But the question is whether we'll be able to finance, the ambition that we have. Because as things stand, we spend, for instance, 60% of our budget on the social wage, meaning that we remain with very little money to support the economy, to support security. So we have to figure out how we are going to deal with that, because that's not only unique to South Africa, but also is the same in other countries. Now, the third part is around social protection. Now, social protection, as I've indicated, is heavily funded. I was reading something on X Wealth of Statistics indicating that we are at the top as South Africa when it comes to financing education. And one can safely say, sitting here, that even being at the top, we still have a deficit in terms of the needs. One can take, for instance, the infrastructure need. That's just the toilets that we need, the ablution system that we need in schools. We don't have money to finance something as basic as that. So you can imagine that even with the funding that we have invested on the social wage, was still not where we are supposed to be. Let me round up as follows, that if we don't work together and find each other at all levels, we may end up with a situation, with a drift, where we end up being a welfare state, because we'll always be forced on our side as government whenever there are challenges to just intervene from a social policy point of view. So achieving that equilibrium, it's clear that it can't be done by one entity or government alone. We have to work together to do that. So we all know about the priorities that the president has announced for the purposes of the G20 overall. So what we are suggesting from our side as the department that comes from the planning side is that please come on board for the purposes of doing the following as I round up. One, we need to talk about the agenda, how we influence the agenda. So that is the pre-summit. Then there is the summit. And then there is the post-summit. What then happens after the summit? What are we going to do together? So we need to fashion that kind of an ecosystem, that tapestry, so that we can then work together throughout. And if colleagues were to ask, what do you mean, what can we do, practically in working together? We'll have to do research, publish documents, conceptual documents. We have to host events that may be necessary to canvass ideas with a range of stakeholders. Then we can also establish partnerships using this platform of the G20. So, Chair and colleagues, I have my boss here, Ms. Josephilda Hlapo Hlope, who is the overall coordinator of the working group. And then she will then join me as we deliberate on what may need to happen, specific issues. So she will assist with that. And she will be the point of contact and ensure that all the DFIs are sufficiently engaged. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tichi. I think that's very useful so that we understand what is it that we're doing. Okay, now, can we open it up for a family conversation? Or maybe let me not use family. Can we open it up for a conversation around these issues that have been raised by Carlos and by the DG? And let's see if we can come up with very clear action points on the other side of these 45 minutes. Okay, let me see hands. If you're too far, you must use a page because I can't see that far. I've got a hand here. I've got a hand over there. I've got a hand over there. So now you will understand. I've got a hand here. Now you'll understand why I said come to the high table. Okay. I thought there should be more hands, colleagues. Okay. All right. Let's do it like that. Yes. Of course.
Thank you, Program Director. My name is Posani Mngavisa from Gauteng Enterprise Propeller. Thank you for this session. And Chair, I'm tempted to say I like the caption of the theme that says practical steps and collaboration. Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, our mandate is to provide SMMEs, for financial and non-financial support. We are based in Gauteng. Gauteng is the most populous province in South Africa. It has 15.9 million people. And then in terms of GDP, it contributes 35% to the GDP. And in terms of SMMEs, the latest research says we have over 2.7 million SMMEs, and 32% of those are concentrated in Gauteng, which is 864,000 of them. I think, you see, the problems are not new. The issue is, the system is so fragmented. And I think platforms like these, are the ones that we need to, from them, we need to develop a program of action with timeframes and roles and responsibilities of different partners. Chair, I like, the Brazilian model, and I'm saying we are a provincial DFI. Of the DFIs in South Africa, we are the most well-run, DFI. The data speaks for itself. We are in the economic hub of South Africa and would really like to have a discussion which is practical. So I think from a South African point of view, I agree with the presentation, I think, by the CEO that collaboration is very important and the impact, because if you look at the ecosystem of SMMEs, it's so fragmented and we can't measure impact. And therefore, if we were to work together, because we are a unitary state, although we've got provinces, but we will then be able to make an impact and effectiveness. Because the issue is not that we do not have, the resources. The issue is that we need to collaborate. For instance, we, as a provincial DFI, we have partnerships with IDC, for instance. It's a national, DFI and so on and so forth. And we are inviting, all DFIs, both in South Africa and beyond South Africa to partner with us. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm revising the rules. So, so 3 minutes. Let's take 3 minutes to make an intervention, and don't introduce the DFI. You're talking to us, so we know who we are. Just make the intervention. Okay.
Okay, thank you so very much, Program Director and all the leaders in the House. Mine is a comment and a question, so I'll be brief. My name is Oliver Fortune Chikuzori. My background is in investment banking. I don't work for any bank. I do investment facilitations. I run a company called Africa Rising TV, as well as Asania FAP Holdings. My comment is when it comes to collaborations, and I think it's been a buzzword at this forum, collaborations are great, but they can only be great when they are intentional about the objectives that we have to achieve. So we have to be intentional about what we want to achieve and as a collective address it. And then my question is, it will go to my sister, my leader, Sisi Boitumelo, and the general doctor from the DPMR, is that I think for those that have not joined the CEO's Forum on Finance, as well as the working group, I think, can we have a conversation outside the platform so we can see how we can intentionally, because we don't want this to be a talk show, we want to make commitments and be part of the action plan in order for us to achieve objectives. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we're going to go to the back. I see this new 1, 2, yeah. And then 3. I'll come back to you. Let's start at the back.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've moved from that.
Oh, that's you. That's you. Okay,
Yes,
that's not new.
me.
Okay.
Yes, I'm not new.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes. So, Chair, my comment, I think the issue, what was presented by Brazil, is something that we need to able to champion. And then my name is Bafana Dube from the Black Business Council in the Built Environment, part of BBC. I think as Black Business Council in the country, we've made this recommendation a long time ago of the issue, the fragmentation of our DFIs. And then, Chair, I'll recommend, even though sometimes you don't like it, and then what we have proposed as BBC, to say DBSA must be able to take a lead in making sure that we coordinate these DFIs. We've made that recommendation. And then we've even set up a structure of different DFIs in South Africa. But I think the biggest mistake that we have done is that sometimes we believe as business or black business or business in South Africa, that most of the time, everything must be led by a politician. I don't have any problem with politicians and our ministers and our department. But then when it comes to DFIs, with your experience as DBSA, you must be able to take a lead. And then we'll support that kind of process so that we can able to start coordinating what needs to be done in this country in terms of priorities, in terms of projects, in terms of mobilization of funding, so that we can implement this project. But most of the times we then relegate our responsibilities as citizens in this country, whereby we want government to be everything to ourselves. And it can't be most of the time. So we must take responsibility and a leadership. Sometimes you don't negotiate to lead certain things. You just take leadership and says, for the best interest of my country, I will then lead this kind of process to make sure at the end of the day, as leaders sitting here, we leave legacy of good things that we have initiated. But if we then relegate our responsibility to government, then it becomes a problem because there are so many competing interests in terms of government, what the government needs to do. But I'm appealing, and then the CEO of DBSA is here, and then I see part of the executive of DBSA is here. So I'm making that appeal to say DBSA must be able to take leadership in terms of making sure that you coordinate these DFIs in South Africa so that we can progress as a country. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, point made. Let's go to the lady.
Good evening, colleagues. My name is Nokolo Kashlana. I am from Energy House based in Johannesburg. It's a sustainable community development consultancy that works with the mining sector and the renewable energy sector in developing communities. Thank you very much for this conversation. I'm going to focus on practical steps in collaboration for better impact. Every time in these conferences we share successes and lessons learned, we focus on projects and programs and not holistic and very targeted communities development. That is where the gap for impact is. So the first step in the practical steps is to finding partners that will target specific communities and not just look at education, agriculture, energy poverty, health, but come with the different expertise and say, we will partner with this community for 5 to 10 years. We will target everything according to our expertise, both from the private and the public sector. By the time we leave this community in 10 to 15 years, the money is circulating within this community and they don't need us anymore. Second step, reduce the urban bias of development and pay more attention to holistic rural development. There's opportunity there. There's land, there's water, but there's not enough leaders, entrepreneurs, and resources. So we need to deploy resources there to co-create bankable proposals with these communities and not wait for them to bring the proposals to DFIs or to private sector funding. Third practical step, question everything, especially the criteria for qualification for funding projects. If an educated person in this country with 2 master's degrees and studying for a PhD looks at an application from the IDC and from CIFA and gets overwhelmed, how much more is a farmer from rural Ngushwa in the Eastern Cape? So we need to question everything and the criteria that we use in order to fund projects. Fourth and final practical steps.
Okay, let's.
Oh, thank you.
I think that's fine. We're not going to be able to go through all the steps.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you.
I think that's fine, but I think the point is made about local communities and how we deal with that. I think that's the point.
Thank you very much.
Let's go to the gentleman.
Thank you. My name is Rian Kutsia. I'm from the Industrial Development Corporation. A very relevant discussion, and the Brazilian model, I think, is definitely something that we need to look at. The policy direction is clear, but in our corporate planning processes, we all need to submit our corporate plans in the next month. That is done in silos. So I think when the policy direction is clear and all of our boards have decided on the areas that we want to play, then we need to get together before we submit to see where are the focus areas and the priorities that we need to jointly collaborate on. I think that is one of the areas, because as soon as we have our corporate plans in place, we run with it. So that the second point I want to make is that we actually collaborate extremely good if there are bankable projects. I mean, we're collaborating on the whole REAP process. I'm sure we're going to collaborate on the grid rollout, et cetera. So the challenge is to get projects to bankability. And I think that's where we might have failed in project implementation or preparation and project development funding, so that we really collaborate around those. I just want to make a third point, is that we are, with increasingly debt funding that we need to raise as DFIs, we are under pressure to support our credit ratings, and we need to align ourselves so that we can raise funding in the market. So that unfortunately comes with the risk of us not doing those more than a bank activities, which unfortunately over the short term sometimes create impairments on the book. However, it can develop priorities over the long term. So definitely we're very supportive of exploring further. I want to make, we're in very tough economic conditions, and we have the ambition of industrialization and green growth. But where we find ourselves continuously is just to protect the existing industrial capacity of the country. So we're actually just protecting instead of growing. So that is the challenge that we experience almost on a weekly basis recently. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's go to the gentleman.
Good evening to everyone. My name is Nelly Simabizela of Bantu Investments and Associates. I think the biggest problems that we are facing here in South Africa particularly is the economic segregation that we've created amongst ourselves, and the feasibility around the regulations and policies that we have and how we drive decision-making. With a background of studying demographics in the township of Soweto in Gauteng, it has come into our attention, especially to many of the small businesses that I do advise, that there are many socio-economic problems that are faced by individuals. And through data, our participation rate, if I'm not mistaken, is around the figure of 60%. So I think the question that we then need to ask ourselves is that how do we create an environment that is going to be able to support these different participants, including the entrepreneurs that are going to be funded? Because we cannot lead in an environment whereby we have a strong consumer sentiment or we have high poverty rates. With that said, we can look at things such as your data collection and try to understand our data precisely in terms of where it wants us to go per se, and how do we then drive it to the destination that we want to drive it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so far I've heard from three DFIs. So can I hear some more from the DFIs, please? There's a hand here.
Good day, my name is Aldred Etaler. I'm the CEO for Kakadu Development Agency. So I'm on the other side in implementation. There's an old saying that say 1 minute past 12 could either be late or it could be early. I hope this discussion is early, because I think we don't focus enough internally into the country. Because while I'm sitting at implementation, DFI sit on the funding side. We're both government, but it's a struggle at a local level to implement what government would want. So what I would want to propose is that we maybe have a in-focused session of all DFIs and all development agencies and see how we can mainstream the work of government from funding to implementation. That is the most practical of all that I can think of, because the challenges that we experience at local level is totally removed, and there's a big disparity between what should happen and what DFIs think can happen, and that conversation is needed. Thank you.
And I think that's the point, right? We see different things depending on where we operate. You know, at municipal level, the DFAs there, they see all this stuff at province, at national. So if we collaborate, there's much more chance that we can address the real issues, you know. I mean, someone was talking about project preparation, and question is, why are we not originating where we know there's the gaps, you know? But yes, thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair. My name is Nangam Somatewese. I'm from the Eastern Cape Development Corporation. When you said you wanted to hear from the DFIs, I
And
made
the
same-
DFAs.
I made the same observation that we're actually hearing more from the non-development finance institutions. For me, one of the first observations, and particularly from the CEO's opening remarks in terms of the DFI forum, is that we're probably the only industry that does not have an industry body, an institutionalized platform that represents the players in the industry, which is the DFIs. So we can talk about a forum or technical or steering committees or technical working groups and so on, but if we're not institutionalizing ourselves, we may not be able to have the voice that we want to have in terms of policy direction and other issues that affect the development that we want to see, including the issues of credit rating and things like that, and the cost of capital and things like that. We need to formalize and institutionalize this discussion. The second part is we've seen how the Infrastructure SA model has worked in terms of consolidating and coordinating project preparation for bankable feasibility studies. And what I've been trying to do in the past 2 days is talk to other DFIs, particularly provincial ones, to see, is there a case for us to bring that model to provinces so that work is properly coordinated, projects are properly prepared? In Eastern Cape, for example, the biggest hindrance to us being able to develop infrastructure is the preparation. And at national government, you don't find that there's support provided.
One or two important actions that you have mentioned, which we will have to fit into the process. But CEO, I think we are fine. We can use the remaining time to just wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not going to use the whole time. It's been a rather long day. The Brazilian model, a clear indication that it is possible for coordination to bring enhanced impact. So thank you for that and making the time. And to thank everybody who made the time to come through and have this discussion. This is a discussion for DFIs. And thank you all for your inputs. This is the beginning. This is us taking leadership of having a coordinated approach to development for South Africa. When I was listening to the various inputs, I know the DG mentioned the MTDP, and one of the things that we we are continuously lauded for is plans. But execution is always a challenge. And I think we have an opportunity here, DG, with the proposal that you made, that let's look at the aspirations of our government with the MTDP. Let's come together. That should probably be the first point of engagement, that we all come together. All of us having studied the MTDP, all of us having located ourselves and our role. This goes back to what the gentleman from the Land Bank said, to say, what is our strengths? And what assistance will I then require as an institution? And I think that's important to say, you know, this is what I can do, but to do this, this is what I need. And then we then say, okay, how do we make it possible? And I know it's a 5-year plan, but it's a good start for us to engage. Going back to what the gentleman from IDC said, Rian, on, you know, just as much as we have our corporate plans should more or less align with the aspirations of MTDP, because we are all dealing with the same issues. I don't think we will be way off in terms of what we want to do as individual, individual entities. So I think that is the first point. The second thing is, you know, what was raised by Nanga, which is the intention of this engagement, to then say, how do we then structure ourselves? You know, as an association of some sort, so that we can have a proper structure and coordination, you know, to feed into, because I think this meeting is beyond G20. This is about South Africa. And I think we have an opportunity here to leverage what you have said for us to better coordinate ourselves. So 3 things. MTDP for us at our next meeting to have that discussion between ourselves, coming with our strengths and the support. And then we will, at that engagement, we would have a recommendation on how we can then structure ourselves as development finance institutions in South Africa. I would really like us to try and have this engagement before the end of March. So that we go into the new year. All of us are on end of year March, right? And we are done with our corporate plan, so I'm sure our strategy departments, we've certainly, we are done with our pros, so they can spend the time to go through the MTDP, and so that we can all be empowered to have fruitful discussions at the engagement. So we will get the database. I'm sure DG is there. You've got the database of all of us. Okay, we have the database. We will engage with all of you so that we can have this engagement. And to show leadership, we will also host the first engagement as DBSA. So on that note, colleagues, thank you so much for the time that you have made. I'm personally excited at this discussion that we have just had. It is a seed, it's the beginning, and it will really yield great results for for our country. Thank you.